Welcome to Supply Circles, stories from the innovators, disruptors and improvers in supply chain management today, brought to you by AI Group.
Hello, I'm James Scotland. Welcome to Supply Circles. I'm coming to you from the Yunganbar language region, and in this podcast, we ask the question, how can we in Australia create supply chains that are resilient and sustainable at a time when we are implementing the challenges of the 3Ds? You know them: digitalisation to keep up with your peers and your industries, decarbonisation to meet your legal requirements and targets by 2050 and in some states 2045, and ongoing disruptions, which come in many shapes, not only global pandemics, but also industry disruptions, product disruptions, logistic interruptions and challenges, global inflation, and so many more. Each fortnight, I delve into different sections of the end-to-end supply chain. I chat with fascinating and interesting people, and we try to have a bit of fun along the way. Today, I want to get back to basics. I want to address our fundamental thesis of building resilient and sustainable supply chains. And to help me unpack these issues, my guest today is Adam Blake, the Joint Chief Executive of Blundstone Boots, a man who has been on the inside of the issue for decades, first as an advocate and educator in a business approach called Business by Design, and now as Joint Chief Executive of one of Australia's truly global brands. I'm keen to get his insights and to hear what he has learnt from the front lines over the last few years. And I'm keen to hear what he thinks is ahead. I'm keen to find out how we build resilient and sustainable supply chains. So hello, Adam. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, James. Great to be here.
Let's start at the obvious. You are joint CEO of Blundstone. What is Blundstone?
Blundstone is a 153-year-old family-owned footwear company that is headquartered and always has been in Tasmania. It was started with a very simple mission by John Blundstone and Sons, which was to make things that people need and want on this far-flung colony of Tasmania. And we like to think we continue with a pretty practical approach to that. We've become, from our small beginnings, we're now very much a global brand, selling in over 70 markets around the world. Last year, we sold over 3 million pairs of boots. We have a operational and global supply chain network that is around the world. Probably have a SKU line or a product line of around 250 plus styles every year going to market. And yes, we're really proud that we're able to manage this business from beautiful Tasmania.
It's a story we must find out because this is fantastic. Are they just work boots? Are they? Because I think of Blundstone as the boots I wear when I'm at my brother-in-law's farm. They are magnificent boots, comfortable as all get out, and strong and resilient. And I don't buy many because they're so good. Are there any work boots, or are there other parts to the business?
Yeah, look, we're more than just work boots these days. As a matter of fact, if we look at our sales globally, something like 65 to 70% of our sales globally are in what we call lifestyle. We get a bit scared of the word fashion. But we're still in Australia. We're still very much a work and safety brand or an industrial brand. But overseas, you'll find our brand identity is much more known as a lifestyle, leisure, fashion brand. So that's been a really big change for us, and it's obviously created a lot of change in how we've had to understand to lead our long-term business strategy and who our consumers are and what sort of products we need to make.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to be disappointed we have only 3/4 an hour or so. I've got to start back at you, though. You're the joint CEO or the co-CEO. That's an unusual arrangement. How does it work, and how did it come about? Just talk about that for a while, if you would.
Yeah, look, I think it's unusual, but it's not completely uncommon anymore. A very famous Australian company called Atlassian has two CEOs.
Did SAP, by the way. So certainly in that sector, they seem to get by on two CEOs. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think for Blundstone, you've got to remember, as a family-owned business that's multi-generational and lasting hundreds of years, safe hands is pretty important, and we have a lot of trust in our people, and we like to develop our people and recruit from inside if we can. So that's one of the fundamental tenets of the business. So myself and my co-CEO, Daryl, we were both inside the business and got appointed together. It was also just as COVID was hitting, and I think the owners and the board, our previous CEO, who's now the chair of the board, probably saw that it would be a very tumultuous time to try and bring someone in from the outside. And I would like to think as well that Daryl and I, we both have very different career experiences and knowledge sets. And I think they saw that as the business is getting much bigger and more complex and more global, that having a very complementary set of skills put together was probably a mark for success for where we're at as a business. Doesn't mean it'll be our model forever, but at the moment it's working, and the board very much consciously chose to go that way.
When I did my training in organisational behaviour and structure, and with 10 years or more of consulting, it is, it used to be an anathema to have two leaders. You can't have two leaders. You can only have one. Yeah. And the other thing you never do is you may move your CEO up to chair, because they can't focus on directorship. They focus on management.
That's right.
But it sounds like you guys make this work.
Yeah, we're breaking all the rules, James. Yes, we're making it work, and I'm really proud of how that's happened. It was a long transition. So I joined the company originally in 2015 as the global head of brand design, consumer engagement. Daryl has actually worked for Blundstone all his life, and came from working in the factory and the operational side of the business through. So then a few years ago, both of us were moved into being co-chief operating officers, and that was preparation for the runway to co-CEOs.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think everything is, again, as say in a privately owned business, succession's always a topic, and I think you're always planning for how to do it most smoothly. We have a really high level of engagement in our business with our staff. We have a lot of people who've worked here a long time, so we really work hard to take everybody along with the changes in the business. But yeah, we have to work hard on two things. One is leave your ego at the door when you walk in. And the other is not to allow there being two CEOs. We try to act as one CEO, not to allow that to get in the way or slow things down or create duplication for our team and complexity. That's our responsibility to make it work.
Yeah, without wanting to be trite, the other bits that are truisms are you can't build a global brand from Tasmania. You can't survive 150 years. Very few businesses survive 150 years. Yeah. Maybe by having that different outside, by breaking all the rules is what made a Tasmanian business successful for 150 years. Is that part of the DNA, do you think?
I think there's a spirit in Tasmania that is, we can do it. We'll do it the way we choose to do it. Tasmania's been so remote for so long. Like, it's starting to build its own brand now, which is terrific. But for a long time, most of the world wouldn't have a clue where Tasmania was.
It's part of Australia, isn't it?
Yeah, correct. It's been left off the map a few times.
Somehow it's part of Australia. I'm not sure.
Yeah. But I think that remoteness, I have a theory that remoteness, it sort of gives a space not to be pulled by global trends and normal practices, and to make decisions about how you want to do things. And our boots are a great example. Blundstone, our actual products are the child of Tasmania. They were made for Tasmania. That's why we use crazy thick leather. That's why the soles have got industrial level grip and strength and last for years and years and years and years. They were made for the conditions of Tasmania. So we just made boots how we thought we should make boots. We've made a business the way we think and we should run a business. And we've also decided that we can do that from Tasmania. We're probably the biggest global footprint of a company in Tasmania, I would say.
I would think so, surely.
Yeah. And I think we'll talk about it later, but I think it puts enormous emphasis on our ability to partner with a lot of other partners on both supply and distribution side around the world. You know, the truth is we're a long way from everything. So we've got to really have trusted partners everywhere.
Yeah, question without notice. When I was looking at the Cascade brewery operations a few years ago, they were limited in how much beer they could sell into the mainland of Australia because they couldn't get it to the mainland of Australia. There's only so many ships. Do you face these kind of, extraordinary challenges by being based in Australia, or do you find a way around them to achieve your targets? That's a bad question, but the fundamental is how much more difficult is it in Australia? That's right, in Tasmania than Australia. How much more difficult in Tasmania than being on mainland Australia? Yeah, I got there eventually.
Yeah, that's all right. It was difficult, and that's what led us to take. We still manufacture all of our industrial gumboots here in Tasmania. So below me right now is a factory running. All of our leather products are made with manufacturing partners around the world, and our supply chain comes from suppliers all around the world. I think 2007 was when we officially took leather offshore. It was a combination of tariff changes in Australia, skill base disappearing for traditional industry like footwear making, and local supply chains not being able to provide enough competitively for us to grow to scale. So we literally wouldn't be here today unless we'd made that move.
Right.
We would have disappeared off the face.
Yeah, it's a brave decision though to say, let's take it to the world. Let's take it to the world. Before we move on to the supply chain challenges and operation, back to you. What's on your desk? As joint CEO, what are the challenges facing you at the moment?
Probably like everyone, cybersecurity's a big thing. We have a very active and fast growing program that is constantly dealing with cybersecurity now. Obviously, managing inflationary factors has been pretty tricky particularly through the last 12 months, 18 months. How do you manage to stay competitive, not in a marketplace, but also not where fast-growing costs? That's been really, really tricky. That's a very fine balance. We're doing a lot of work to try and we're a small corporate group really that runs a very large global footprint. So as I said, there's a lot of partners, but we have to understand how to drive efficiency and productivity constantly in our business if we don't want to become too big. So that's a very current piece of work. We couldn't, during COVID, you're just thinking about surviving. Now we can sit back and think about efficiency and productivity that'll fuel the next stage of growth. Brand growth globally. We're opening up more countries. How do we position the brand right? And probably the toughest one that's referencing supply chains, it's on our desk constantly, is we're a self-funded business, so trying to manage the supply side and the timelines required and the planning required on the supply side with the dynamics of fast-moving demand-side markets, it's really hard. It's really hard, when you've got to be placing orders 6 months out for materials and you've got markets going up and down like yo-yos. We spend a lot of time looking at how our forecasts and the inventory of raw materials and all sorts of things. It's just a constant piece of work since COVID started, I think.
Yeah, I know very little about the apparel industry, but I have read Two Dogs by Philip Knight, the guy who started Nike, and I on the weekend, just by coincidence, I was reading the biography of the Rip Curl brand. Rip Curl started on the beaches of Lorne at the same time as I was on the beaches of Cronulla, so I felt an affinity there. And when they described their disgraceful past, it resonated. But both of those books spoke of something that you and I have addressed over the years, which is growing to death. This concept of the more I sell, the more pressure there is on my cash flow, which means that, eventually I just run out of cash flow despite having a lot of orders. And Phil Knight talks about that was an issue for 20, 25 years. And that every month he's trying to figure out how he's going to keep his suppliers happy whilst trying to get money in from sales. Is that an issue for you? I'm sure it must be around the world.
Well, it is, and particularly when you're self-funding your business too. The cash.
Well, that was Nike's problem, of course, because until they went public, they just didn't have anywhere near enough cash.
Yeah, we're studiously proud of the fact that we managed to be a 100% private company. But yes, it just means the holy trinity of your sales forecast, your cash position, and your inventory are something we have to constantly be on top of. We just can't afford for that to run out of alignment too much. And we're obviously one of the challenges for Blundstone now too is that we sell, as I said, we're probably selling something like 70% of our products that are classed as a seasonal autumn-winter boot. So most of our distributed markets and our leisure or lifestyle markets are in the Northern Hemisphere, and it's very seasonal. So we've now got 70% of our volume being demanded in a very short window.
So it's a very, very lumpy cash flow then. I mean, that's just, man.
It's lumpy cash flow and it's a lumpy supply side. So we've got to work really hard with our partners on both sides to try and do our best to smooth where we can. It's not possible. At this point, we're still very much seasonally based on the lifestyle. Thankfully, work and safety is an all year round element. So that part of our business is a nice constant all year round in Australia, New Zealand, and we're starting to sell more in Canada, US, Israel in terms of work and safety. But so that's good. It's good to have that balance between the two different categories because it's really hard for us on cash and for our partners on the supply side to work with a very spiky annual program.
Do you sell thongs or sandals? Because I've been to Bangkok and seen the Bangkok work boot in Mumbai. Don't answer that, perhaps.
No, but yes, it is one of the things you have to look at is can we extend across the full year? We've certainly been creating more spring sort of collection products, and we've also been pushing a bit into winter because you imagine in Canada, a winter boot has a pretty serious meaning. So we've been trying to push in that direction a bit too to occupy more space and spread our season out a bit. So yeah, it's just one of the complexities of us. And the bigger we get with those ebbs and flows get bigger.
I'll pick up a bit more of that later on. Just staying with your role. When we were in COVID, we were basically just trying to manage inventory. Really, a large part of it was matching up the changing demand with inventory that was hard to get through to disrupted logistics, and from that evolved this focus by supply chain on risk management. The supply chain was where your risks were. Identify the risk points and make sure I manage it. Sort of led towards just in case rather than just in time and those other things. But the the conversations I'm having and the stuff I'm reading around the world is that now supply chain managers are back focusing on efficiency. It's back about cost control because cost has just all of a sudden jumped to the forefront. It's got a bit to do with a war in Ukraine. It's got a bit to do with fuel prices, but also inflationary measures all around the world. Is that also lumpy around the world, or is it just a pressure across the whole business?
It's a pretty consistent pressure at the moment. We have pockets. So during COVID, it was quite handy to be so globally distributed because on both supply and distribution, if you remember when COVID hit, it first of all smashed through Italy, Spain, and France, and they're big markets for us. Yeah. But we had other markets.
They hit in winter too, didn't they?
Yeah.
So that was your peak period. Yeah. That's
right. So that it affected there, but was still selling strong in some other places. And then on the supply side, by good management and good luck, we got through fairly undisrupted on the supply side. The big disruption was that was at our footwear manufacturers, but the big disruptions happened in the supply chain, the tier 2 and 3 behind them, in terms of getting materials. So it became, a really hard thing to manage. And of course, the dip for COVID, we were lucky in Australia. We were able to keep operating and shifting our work boots because they were seen as PPE, so that we had a consistency and a base still going. And our factories overseas were able to keep going, so we could supply. The dip from COVID, which was sort of around March 2020, and there's those big spikes that go down March, April, and by May, it's on the way back up. And then it goes miles ahead of where it was before. So, one of the things I'm, really pleased that we did, and we did it because it's the right thing to do, is we didn't walk out on any commitments in the supply chain or any partnerships.
Oh, well done.
We just said we can get through, right? We'll bankroll our way. We'll get through this together. And boy, did that pay off about 2 months later when everyone was screaming for products and people had walked out on factories and they'd lost their spot. But the point, when they walk out on the factory, that's 2,000 people who don't have a job to go to anymore. Yeah. So we're very conscious of the people who work for us and with us on our brand and our partnerships, because those same partnerships then went into hyper mode and enabled us to have 2 of the biggest years we've ever had during COVID.
Is that right? Yeah, I mean, it's all about relationship supply chain, isn't it? And sometimes you got to go down multiple layers. You just can't just deal with the ones you talk to. You've got to talk to your suppliers, but also talk to your end consumer as well. Tough times. Yeah. What did you personally learn from all of that? Did you learn anything about yourself?
Well, it was really good to have 2 CEOs during COVID, let me tell you.
To share the pain.
Because it was like managing in the dark. You really didn't know what was coming or where you were going. So that certainly forged our joint CEO relationship.
Well, it was either going to break it or make it, wasn't
it? Yeah. Look, I think the other thing is, I suppose you learn the sky isn't completely falling in. Now, I know some businesses didn't last, so I'm saying that with some circumspection, but for us, it's very easy to get sucked into the worst. And actually, when we sat back and we learned very quickly, just got to sit back and look at what's actually happening on the ground. Because you've got this world of noise around you from media, and your own staff are worried sick about what's going to happen. So, one of the first things we did, thanks to our owners who told us to do this, was as soon as COVID hit, the first thing they said is, you're going to tell everyone no one's losing a job at least for a year.
Yeah.
First thing we did. And that just calmed down the place a little bit and made people feel, okay, outside of work, it's mayhem, but I know I've got a job. And as I said, we learnt that the strength of partnerships was actually, it probably showed us and taught us it amplified that our whole business model is built on partnerships. Because when COVID hit, we've got partners on the distribution side who are investing a lot in our brand and are buying a lot of stock from us. We've got suppliers investing a lot in making our product, in machinery, people, raw materials. We just realized that we have to work this as a partnership model. Our actual fundamental business is a partnership model.
That's to everyone listening. Listen to that. That's the key, isn't it? Your business is a human endeavor. It's a bunch of people working together, using tools, using resources, using AI. But it comes back to people, and you need partnerships for that. Great message.
Yeah.
During COVID, we saw an explosion of online business. People buying things at home. They were stuck at home, so they started buying. It's counterintuitive for a thong-wearing person like me to think of buying shoes while you're stuck at home. But do you have an online business, and how did that go?
Yes, we do. So I can only really, I can talk about all of our partners around the world and their online business, but let's just take the markets that we run that directly. So Australia, New Zealand, and USA, which are the three markets we run ourselves. In the USA, our web store generates about 30% of our sales in the USA. Just to give you a perspective of the scale of online buying in the USA, in 2022 at the Black Friday sale, which runs for 5 days because we give an extra day for some of our members, we sold 45,000 pairs of boots in 5 days.
Wow.
You can imagine how the warehouse and customer service, what that means for them. It's a nightmare, but it's terrific on the sales side. But it shows you the power of brand and engagement with consumer once you've got that sort of audience sitting. Now, we are still a fledgling brand in the USA, and that's what we can do online. So for us, it's obviously in Australia, we're starting to grow a lot more online, but we only sell the leisure or lifestyle products online here because we've got such long relationships with our work and safety retail customers and resellers that we have made a conscious decision not to sell over the top of them. And that's because in Australia, we are still 90% a wholesale business. So we have to remember where our bread is buttered and be careful when you're doing online. But it's incredibly important, as you guessed, in your fit is an issue, returns are an issue, exchange and refund, all of those things. It comes with a big resourcing ticket to do it well and at scale. And you have to spend handsomely on getting eyeballs to your site and spend handsomely and constantly changing your website to improve the consumer experience and get them to convert and buy as smoothly as possible.
But part of the customer experience is what you were saying before. Part of it is that last mile delivery. You've got to have good distribution structures in place, and they've got to be timely. If I buy them now, I don't want to wait 3 weeks to get them. And the other one, I'm thinking of America here as well. And the other one is returns. If I get them, I don't like them, I want them back to you straight away. So you've got to have this reverse supply chain in place.
Yeah.
I know that many companies have struggled with this. Has it been a challenge for you guys?
It's a massive struggle. I think you just have to accept it's part of footwear online. I mean, just think of if you go into a shoe shop, how much you sit down and try shoes on to get the right fit. Online, our best customer is someone who already knows their size in Blundstone because they're away. In US, there's an average of about 30% return rate in footwear. Now, the best thing we can do is accept that. Accept that.
That's expensive.
It's expensive because you're paying for it twice now. But accept it, build it into your cost structure, but also build a really smooth process that means you don't lose that person when they send their boots back. So we're really working hard at the moment on not just refund, but how do we allow for exchange? Yeah. How do we set up? We've built a whole lot of assets around finding the right fit for you with our boots. how to make sure you get, because the last thing you want is someone to have bad experience the first time they slip a boot on. So if they do, let's go into overtime and try and hang on to that consumer and not lose them. But it's a real issue. It's a real issue in, I think clothing might be similar, but not quite as sensitive. But footwear is absolutely a fit thing. And I think it's just part of our business.
The fundamental point, though, is that if when you're buying online, you're buying on this promise idea of you will get to me the product that I want, and it may take 3 or 4 goes because I'm dumb, but I still need you to solve the problem for me, as you might do if I was in store. The promise of online purchasing is implicit. Do you agree?
It's your brand promise. Back to the brand and design. That is your brand promise. We say we've got some of the most comfortable boots, most durable boots, and highest quality boots in the world. When people get that, you're really hoping that promise translates as they open the box and put that boot on for the first time. But inevitably, there's going to be issues with it. So you've just got to focus on making the experience as smooth as possible. The other ways you can try and set up, there's much more of this since COVID. We're seeing people wanting to go back to shops. So there's this omni-channel thinking starting, which is how to make it really smooth between a shop and online. Make sure that experience of the brand is consistent. Make sure they can work together. There's even models where a supplier brand like us and our retail customers can work together to share the revenue of sales and all sorts of things. So you can have returns happening at a shop where someone can sit down with them and make sure they fit them with the right pair.
Yeah, right.
Rather than this online thing and waiting weeks and
looking at multiple ways to deliver the promise. Absolutely makes sense. We should move on, but before we do, you said I think 35,000 sales in 5 days.
45.
45.
Yeah.
And if Black Friday is at the beginning of northern winter,
end of November. Yeah. So it's just as going into the heavy part.
So it cleans out your warehouse at the time that you're going into your major sales. What?
No, that's all right. They've got a stock model built for that.
Is that right? Yeah.
Actually, the harder part is what it does at the warehouse floor. Because if you got a warehouse that's generally for the rest of the year built around single picks for website throughout the year, because we do 30% of our business, but 30% of that business that we do online, close to 30% of that is done in the space of about 2 weeks. So it's very hard having a warehouse that's built around wholesale and one that's trying to run with single picks at 45,000 in 5 days. It's crazy.
Yeah, your warehouse managers just must.
But we're doing it.
Yeah.
We're doing it.
Black Friday must have different meanings for different people, and warehouse managers aren't a big fan of it, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's pretty tense time to go to the warehouse. Let me tell you. Yeah.
Let's go to a break. Before we do, did I see that Blundstone sponsored for a little while a V8 supercar? Was it Cam somewhere? It seemed like a natural fit for me, assuming that V8s are those sort of working man's kind of sport, and you've got working boots, safety boots. Was it worthwhile? What's it like? No, just a vague question about sponsorship, I guess.
No, we felt it was a natural fit. We have moved on from that sponsorship, and we actually have what's called the Blundstone Arena down here in Hobart, which is a cricket and football stadium that we sponsor. And we've actually, I'll try and cut it really short, but as a family business, we have an ethos of giving forward. So we invest in causes and sponsorship often around the next generation. So we actually sponsor a young racing driver from Tasmania who is racing in Europe now with Mercedes, Alex Peroni. And so we decided we wanted to support our sort of longevity in racing, but focus in on a really talented young kid and see if we could really turn the dial for him
I will assume then that when I wear my Blundstones in my Mercedes, it's not as as sacrilegious as it sounds like.
Not at all, James. Our tagline is "Everywhere life takes me," and that's what you can wear Blundstones everywhere.
I like it. All right, let's have a break. When we come back, we'll talk some more about business by design, if that's okay. I'm talking to Adam Blake from Blundstone, and this is a good chat.
If you have supply chain or business improvement challenges, contact AI Group's Business Improvement and Growth Hub. The Big Hub is a library of practical and relevant resources designed to assist member businesses to grow and improve. The Big Hub also includes an extensive network of experienced, pre-qualified business improvement consultants. For more details, contact big@aigroup.com.au. That's big@aigroup.com.au.
Adam, you and I first met each other years ago when you were involved in the ideas of business by design. And if my rattled old brain is still working, I think your point was that you focus your whole business around the consumer. The consumer is the point of focus. And since then, there's been a lot of discussion about how you design businesses. You're an expert in this. One of the things that comes up a lot is this idea of many businesses are just one up, one down. I'm looking to supply the person who's directly in front of me, and I'm looking to manage the supplier who's directly behind me. But organisations don't do that. Organisations exist to fulfil the need of the end consumer. Can you just talk to me a little bit about what you think business by design is, and how do you focus on the end consumer?
It's a big turnaround for a lot of businesses. As you said, I've referenced when I worked, with the program through the government, working with businesses, which is how I got to meet Blundstone through our business by design or design integration program. Most businesses are set up in a very, as you say, exactly as you said, one up, one down, or a very stage gate way of operating. We make things, someone goes out and sells them. That's that, puts a lot of pressure on sales, and it basically means you've got a tail, wagging the dog situation often. Remember, we're a manufacturer for 138 of those 153 years. So it's been a big turnaround, let me tell you, to become a global brand that's become brand and consumer led. For us, when Blundstone first engaged myself and some of our other team to work with them around building design and brand capability, I think it's interesting to think about why they did that, why they were interested. At the time, they wanted to understand how they could find insights that would help them innovate and find their own space in the market. And at that sort of blue ocean idea. If you just, we can make boots as good as anyone else in the world, but you can get stuck in a feature tweaking race, as I call it. Oh, they've done this, we can do that. They've done that. Yeah. You've actually got to find your own space. And so in a way, it was about where do we get those insights to tell us what to do in innovation and product design? And that was the beginning. And the other one was we had a lot of noise as we started to open up around the world. Our retail and distribution partners said, you guys have got fantastic product, beautiful, beautiful boots, but we actually need something more than the boots to sell, right? We need a thing called brand, and you're this 150-odd-year-old business and you're giving us nothing. You're just giving us brown and black boot and telling us to go and sell it. So we realized that we were lacking in, I often call brand like the center pole in a circus tent. The tent was just being held up by the products, and the products have to fight so hard if there's no brand around them. And that brand story for us becomes what starts to draw consumers in as well. And then we got close. So because our business model is built around, as I said, essentially we're a brand owner in the middle of a very big value chain. So people could ask the question, why do we have to know the consumer? Why someone else can do that? But the point is, we have to know the consumer to design the products they want and need, which, remember, is how we started in 1870. We also have to know the consumer, so we're sending the right messages as the brand to bring people to us. So we decided that we had to rethink the business from a manufacturing mindset to say, actually, the business and the asset we're managing is a global brand. So I often say it's the golden egg is our brand, is the golden egg that's being passed from generation to generation. So if that's our greatest asset, we have to know consumers intrinsically as well as anyone else in that value chain, because we're responsible for designing products they want and will pay good value for, and we're responsible for sending the right messages to the world to engage consumers. So that was a really big shift for us as a business.
Are you saying it's more than just when someone was buying boots in Lyon in France, they were not buying Blundstone, a bloody good boot. They were buying something a lot more than that?
Yes, I think now they're buying into the whole story. They're understanding we're the original Chelsea boot. We've been around for 153 years. We make the toughest boots. So they're now buying into a story and engaging with that brand story. And so the more the consumer engages with it, you become part of their own personal brand. So we know when I travel, this is how we came up with Every Life Takes Me. I'd love to say it was a $1 million advertising campaign.
I'd love to say you paid me in for it. Yeah.
Every time I sat down, every time everyone in this business sits down on an aeroplane or goes somewhere, someone, who do you work for? Blundstone. Oh, let me tell you where I've been in my Blundstones.
Oh, right? Okay.
It's a real truth about our product because they last so long. People live experiences in them. So we want people to feel part of that brand that is Blundstone could be part of your life. Yeah. And so it sounds a bit esoteric, but it is how we've approached trying to create what we say is we have an inclusive brand. We want the guy wearing his mining boots to feel just as much part of Blundstone as a young 17-year-old female going to a music festival in Paris. Right? Those two people, we want them to both feel they can be part of Blundstone.
Yeah, right.
So we have to make it a story about what Blundstone stands for and that matches what people are looking for, not a story about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
The last bit of the design journey was when I joined Blundstone. They said, great work, you've convinced us, design a brand, we need it. Come on in, join it. And in fact, you can lead it because we don't know how to lead that. That's not sitting in our business process map. Where does that happen? So what I realized was, this is probably my learning from the design integration or business by design program, is that you actually have to rebuild the car before you can drive it differently. You can't just hop in and say, oh, we're driving the business differently now. Because the business has to be built around where design and brand fit in our processes and who works on that and what team and what point are you engaging consumer insights in product development and at what point are you designing brand campaigns and when are you releasing them? But you have to. So we really in the last 5 years we established a new business framework or a business model called global brand management. And that's allowed us to really think about where the consumer fits. And as I said before about online, digital, it's teaching us to think like a retailer. Now remember, we've been a manufacturer and a wholesaler. Now we're like, oh, okay, we've got to think like a retailer. That's our shop, the online store.
Mm-hmm.
We can't treat that like we're some wholesaler. It doesn't matter if you can't ship on a Saturday and Sunday. Yes, it does. People are buying online on Friday night. They want their boots ASAP.
And it's all part of that, the brand experience. You can't separate.
You've really got to question yourself. So we operate a multiple. We operate as hopefully a best-in-class wholesaler. We're a supply partner, and we're also selling direct on our online, and we're engaging consumers for insights. So I think the last 10 years for Blundstone has been stratospheric change from a company that thought of itself as a pretty parochial Australian men's work brand to a global brand that's now selling more in the lifestyle and fashion segments and probably has more women than men buying our product.
It's a real example of that that assignment you got at uni saying, yes, it's been around for 140 years and that's part of the brand story. But imagine that you're starting the business today. How would you set it up differently from the way it was? You've done that.
Yeah. We've and listen, Blundstone's we have a saying that the only reason we're here 153 years later is we stay relevant. So unless our products and our business model stays relevant, we're gone. It's not going to last another 150. So when we took leather manufacturing offshore, we're proud of that now. We're proud of our partners overseas. We would not be here if we hadn't done it. So you have to make decisions to shift gears. And obviously for us, the work and safety market in Australia and New Zealand is a very mature market, and we have a big slice of it, along with some other big competitors. But the exponential growth is going to come from discretionary sales through fashion, and that's going to happen in markets all around the world, more than it is in little old Tasmania and Australia. So we realised that if we want to exponentially grow this thing, you got to look overseas and you got to look into categories or channels in the market that we hadn't been in ever before.
I've just come back from Europe, and I noticed in South Germany, I spent a fair bit of time in South Germany, in Bavaria, and their day-to-day understanding and acceptance of the change into a post-carbon world is strong. It's a beautiful, clean, there's electric vehicles everywhere. So can I ask you about ESG? It's a big issue for supply chain and environment and social governance. It's different all around the world. How do you manage a global approach to environment and social governance when there's so much variance?
Yeah, look, that's such a accurate statement, James. It's running at different paces in different places all the time. The same thing happened with sort of data privacy too. It sort of swept around different places, but we tend to try and pin ourselves to wherever the leading edge is of standards, regulation, etc. Because inevitably, a few years later, everyone's going to be catching up and running towards that. So when data privacy came in, we immediately pinned ourselves to the European standard. It's like absolutely painful, but we just realised if we didn't, we'd only be back there 1 year later, retrofitting.
It's so honest, isn't it? Do the hard bit. Do the hard bit. It's not nice, but it is what you need to do.
Might as well tackle it.
Yeah.
ESG, it's got a couple of things for us. First of all, it's a no-brainer for us. Again, remember, multi-generational, privately owned business. It's part of how that golden egg called the brand is going to be passed on to the next generation and the next and the next. So ESG has to be done. It's also the right thing to do. So there's no fight with it. It's probably getting used to the fact that, exactly to your question, we won't be totally in control of the pace in which we have to do this. The world will dictate that to some degree. Yeah. Now, that world is a range of players all operating on their own agendas. Consumers already starting to use their purchasing power to make decisions. Consumers on digital can make or break you in 3 seconds. So you've got that aspect. We've also got some very big retail customers or partners who are really pushing us hard. So one example is REI, which is a very large outdoor chain, the biggest in America. They're one of our biggest retail partners. Every year they come back with a self-audit, and they have a series of things that they tell you need to improve on. And they say, if you get to a certain point where you're not up to our standards, we won't take your product. Full stop.
No.
End of discussion. So that's happening. You've got legislation, regulation. You've got chemical standards changing very fast. PFAS has been one that's been on the news here. but in America is sweeping very quickly across the market. That has to do with, particularly with products that are made with waterproof qualities and high durability. So that's just suddenly arrived, and the chemical standards coming out of California, they'll just say you have to have it out of your products by the 1st of January 25. So our accreditations team, which tries to keep up with this stuff, is really, we're having to resource that more and more because the pace is picking up.
But it's still part of your brand. It's still an important part of your brand, though, isn't it? This whole, you don't want to end up on the front page of, the Sacramento Chronicle.
Never, ever. And I think we have to approach it both from an opportunity side. There are certain consumers that, if we want to be relevant and a high-value product, you're probably going to have ESG well under control and part of your brand in the future. At the moment, consumers are a bit, we want ESG, but we're not prepared to pay. But that'll shift quickly. And I think for us, a year ago, we hired our first ever ESG manager. So we've got 3 streams sort of running. One is looking at our own business as usual and where we've got to shift gears around our warehouses, our sales, car fleet, waste, recycling, travel, transport, lots of things. Then you've got, remember for us, we're a partnership model, so we've got an enormous amount of partners who if we want to talk about Blundstone globally's ESG, our environmental footprint, it involves all of them too. So we've got a whole program where we have to, as the brand owner and supplier and distributor, or buyer and distributor, we have to change gears and work as a value chain leader in this space with our partners to show them and help them what we expect. And then you've got the whole stream around the product itself, circularity, resale, recycling materials, end of life. What's the life cycle of your product? Thankfully, our products last forever. So that is actually a good tick for ESG and sustainability. So it's a growing program in our business. And what it'll actually do, it'll probably drive most of our product innovation for the next however long.
Yeah.
It'll be the lead input into innovation.
In a recent podcast, I interviewed 2 professors, Melissa and Renu from UTS, an old stomping ground of yours, and they're specialists in supply chain and sustainability, and they were convinced that the future is consumers buying based on lifestyle and their beliefs. It's going to be value-based, personal value-based decisions. And the extension of that is digitalization is your friend. So just to wrap up, is digitalization your friend? I would preface it by saying, someone said to me recently, accolades to all the small to medium-sized businesses that have been able to change to digitalization, because you've got to keep running business as usual while you fundamentally change your business. How are you guys going?
You said it perfectly, James. It's the constant struggle for a business. And whilst we've got a big global footprint, we still are we're 140 direct employees. We're still quite a small business in that way. And we choose to keep it tight at the centre. A constant conversation we have is how much can the business carry at one time? What happens when you run? We just came out the other end of implementing a new ERP system. That's taken us about 3 years and was pretty much like throwing a bomb into the centre of the business.
I shiver when I hear those words, because it brings back memories there.
And we got 4 different business entities we had to implement it for. So absolutely massive. So we have a very clear systems roadmap set out, but we're constantly going back to it and assessing how much can we carry at any one time. Which of these products are going to pay us an efficiency and productivity dividend in the long run? Yeah. So should we put them first in the chain? Which ones do we have to do? Like cybersecurity is a non-negotiable. It has to be attended to. And the IT team is becoming a bigger and bigger entity. So the mix of what internal skills do you need and external skills, and therefore what's your budget to go with it. So it's between that and ESG and BAU, that's three big balls to keep in the air, trust me.
And that's what I said before, trying to keep all three of them under control, whilst underpinning that is lumpy sales and difficult cash flow. Must be good.
And fast growth. We've grown enormously in the last 10 years. So we've got all of that happening at the same time. Yeah.
I could keep talking for hours. This is just fascinating. We should wrap it up there and let you get back to fast growing your business. One last question then. What's the next frontier, either for you or for the brand?
Yeah, well, for me, it's the joy of living into being a grandpa and these beautiful little cherubs that you can hand back. all love and no responsibility. That's great.
Finally got there, eh? Finally got there. Well done.
Yeah. I think for Blundstone, we're really enjoying, stepping up into the global brand space. And we got a lot of love around the world. We got a lot of we have distributors coming to us now saying, we want your brand. So we see lots of opportunity ahead. The lumpiness is difficult, but there's lots of opportunity for us as a brand. We have a lot of credibility as a brand. The issue for us will be managing at what pace we can do it. That's all.
Yeah.
But we're dedicated. The owners are the proudest Tasmanians you would ever meet, and headquarters will always be here.
In Hobart?
Yeah. So I think for us, it's that's a given. But we now have a whole team of people who service the brand globally and service the supply chain globally. So, I think just constantly understanding at what pace we can grow responsibly and sensibly and not kill our team.
Well, if you've got people coming, distributors coming to you and asking for the product, that means the brand story is working, isn't it? It's resonating around the world. What a great thing.
Yeah, it is. It's a good thing, and I could not be prouder than work for such an icon as Blundstone.
What a great story. I have one pair of Blundstone boots. Do you think that's the right number?
No, because as you said, our boots last so darn long. We need everyone to have a big collection. Otherwise, we're waiting 10 years for a repeat purchase.
Yeah, I know. And that's true. Yeah, but that's the perfect product for the future. That's just not this sort of disposable, throwaway kind of culture. So I hope that's part of your brand story.
We are the epitome of slow fashion.
Slow fashion.
Honestly, it is. We are well positioned for that sort of conscious consumption model that we're moving into.
It's been fabulous talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. I hope that it continues to go as well as it has. I think you've been managed to get through COVID as well as you have. Signs are good for the future. Thank you very much.
Thanks, James. It's been good to see you again.
Well, that's it for another episode of Supply Circles. Thanks again to everyone for listening, and thanks for your feedback. If you do have any feedback on today's interview with Adam Blake or ideas of the show, or just want to give me some feedback, hit me up at james.scotland with one T, james.scotland@aigroup.com.au, or at my LinkedIn page. I'd love to hear from you. And we'll be back in a fortnight with more insights into the keys of building sustainable supply chains. Thanks for joining me. This is Supply Circles. I'm James Scotland. Bye for now.